was a prophet. I mean, if you want to call it something like that. So, okay, so we are live on YouTube, and it's Sharon, Marcy, Lynn. I see Regis here, um, Dove, and we are reading Never Forget to Laugh, a book by Carol Howe about the life of Bill Thetford, co-scribe of A Course in Miracles. And so I'm just so grateful to have you all here with us. And Regis, I had a great time with your wife the other day, and we decided we're just going to start going out together, and you can just stay home. So,
I would have loved to have met her because I think I've seen pictures. She's just beautiful.
she's a doll. Yeah, she came to the birthday Sandy birthday party, but yeah, she's adorable. I can see what Regis sees in her for sure. Um, but anyway, hello, everybody. Um, let us get our book up. And then did I tell you that did I mention that Bruce and I, when we're done reading Absence from Felicity, we're going to
Yes,
start
I'm
reading
excited about it. I
Symphony,
really am.
yeah, the Ken Wapnick biography.
Yeah, I think Marcy will want to hear that too because she's a Ken Wapnick person too.
She's a Wapnick.
Saturdays, they're going to do it at it's 9:30 your time, Marcy.
Yeah, yeah, because it's 8:30 my time. So yeah, you're welcome to join us too. That's of course we'll put it on YouTube as well. So okay. So we were going to go back to this is when Bill went to see Catherine Coleman, who was uh, a uh, a healer. I remember her, a faith healer during like the 60s or something. Well, it must have been. What am I talking about? Or maybe yeah, early 70s. Um, so I guess I'll just start reading here, unless you want to read, Sharon. It doesn't matter to me. One
You know
way.
what? I have to put chicken in the oven, so I'm going to listen for about. It'll probably take
Okay,
me 15 minutes. Okay,
that
10
sounds good
minutes.
to me.
All right.
There's some chicken in the oven. Okay. I don't know why I've been singing this morning. I'm still all hoarse from these stupid allergies. It's been crazy. Crazy. All right. So, uh, since the course was clearly about both healing and teaching, Bill sought more information about unusual healing practices, just as he investigated various mystical traditions. He had watched Catherine Coleman, a widely known faith healer, on TV and thought she was a bit hysterical but sincere, prompting him to seek her out. They managed to acquire front row seats to one of her events in New York and were captivated at seeing her in action up close. Bill recounts. It was a highly charged emotional atmosphere. At the beginning, Catherine came out on stage and she went through a warm up period. She was really coquettish and, to my mind, inappropriate, especially for her age. She wore a white dress and made little jokes, gradually warming up her audience. This went on for a while, then gradually something began to happen. She became more serious and started talking about the power of spirit. I was aware of the moment when things clicked, changed. She became quite different. Another consciousness had taken over. That was presumably what she was waiting for. It takes enormous courage to get up before thousands of people and wait for that to happen. When it happened, there was a feeling of authenticity about it. She was no longer this sort of silly, somewhat hysterical woman, but a power and spirit that somehow came through. When she started calling out healings in various parts of the audience, people would calm down and line up. It was amazing. She would just touch people and they would fall over. This went on for hours. Time didn't seem to make any difference. None of it seemed contrived. It was all quite startling. Some of it may have been suggestion, but I don't think it was all suggestion. It's easy to dismiss this kind of thing, but Helen was very moved by it too. Helen even dropped all of her blasé defensiveness, and I was very touched. We felt a tremendous spiritual power that was generated somehow. Catherine was acting as a common battery, I guess. She was the focal point of this energy. It was very, very impressive. It went on all day, and by the time we left, I felt both exhilarated and drained. Wow, this is pretty amazing. So, this woman, you think, well, she's just like one of those TV televangelists, but there is something. It is a power like hypnosis that comes about people, and I think about Esther Hicks and Abraham, the same kind of way, or Bashar. What's his name? When he, you know, becomes Bashar. And all of a sudden, he's talking completely different. And and the things that he's saying are, like something completely out. It's like uh, there's a obviously tapping into something that is on a different level, spiritual level. And I've seen it, before in other situations too, where, people just seem to, uh, just click and change and become uh, very eloquent, say things that you would not even imagine them thinking or saying. It can be pretty darn amazing. So I can imagine that going and seeing this woman, and I wonder at the end how she felt, if she was energized or if she was exhausted. Thinking about like Amma sitting there hugging people, Amma, the hugging saint, hugging people all day for hours upon hours upon hours. It, I believe that probably the energy would get you really high. I would think so, and you wouldn't be drained by it. But they both exhilarated and drained. Let's see. Okay, so if Bill sought out of the ordinary experiences, the reverse was also true. Cal Hatcher, Bill's confidant as the course was being scribed, recalled an incident, quote, Father Ben in this tale was Bill's graduate student who arranged the first meeting between Helen, Bill, and Ken Wapnick. And so this is what Cal Hatcher says. Um, Ben had come up to Columbia and taken his doctorate under Bill in psychology. Ben was confessing to Cardinal Cook, and which that means that he was a Catholic and he um, uh, uh, was connected to Cardinal Cook, this great cardinal in, uh, I guess, New York. For some reason, I thought Cardinal Cook was in Chicago, but anyway, nothing important there. All right, so he was a character to me and would come up there with his long brown robes with his cross swinging on him. My office was on the first floor at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, and sometimes he'd throw little pebbles at the window to get my attention. One day he came by and was throwing pebbles. There was a little concrete ledge there and an iron fence all around. Let's see, all around the office building I was in. I raised the window, and Father Ben was standing out there with these two ladies in habits, nuns. He said, I want you to come meet a friend of mine. I invited them to come in to talk. We don't have time, he said, but this is Mother Teresa, and this is Sister so and so. Well, I didn't know who Mother Teresa was, but my assistant, who was Catholic, said to me, you dim-witted Protestant, you wouldn't know anything. So Mother Teresa was there. Can you believe this? Oh my gosh. um, so she was short and so was standing up on the concrete ledge with the other sister. We were just talking back and forth, and they were on their way to see Bill and Helen. The famous Mother Teresa from India was on her way to see Bill and Helen. And it's interesting, Mother Teresa also went to see Vicky in Vicky's restaurant, and Vicky has a statue, a life-size statue of Mother Teresa. She was really small. She was tiny, tiny little lady. Um, so Bill said that while they were transcribing the course, he had prayed that he might meet a living teacher, someone who embodied these teachings of love. He had been led to a book about Mother Teresa, and shortly after, circumstances conspired to facilitate a meeting with her. She was then establishing a branch of her order in the South Bronx, the worst of all crime-ridden poverty areas in New York. He was invited to meet her there, and of that invitation, Bill said, initially, uh, let's see, what I felt apprehensive about having my prayers answered, since I was not sure that I was up to meeting a living saint. However, when this tiny woman graciously met us with palms extended, I felt an almost instantaneous sense of relief. It seemed as if I had already always known her. Completely selfless and without pretense, she radiated the joy of total spiritual commitment. Later, when she turned to me and said, Doctor, wouldn't you like to come to India? There is so much you could do to help the poor. I felt an almost irresistible impulse to answer yes. To me, her life is a demonstration of the importance of total dedication and complete consistency on the spiritual path. Later, she came to see Bill and Helen. They visited on more than one occasion. As Tammy Cohen, who is now we know as Tammy, I forget her last name. Anyway, Morgan, Tam Morgan, as Tammy Cohen conducted interviews about Bill and the course et al. In the mid 1990s, several would begin a sentence with Bill was no saint, but and proceed to comment on his gentle ways, his generosity of spirit, or his refusal to indulge in character assassination. Those I interviewed or others who knew him in California never included the initial qualifying phrase, but mentioned only his positive traits. His westward move proved to be a specific line of demarcation and how most people saw him. It also marks that time when, perhaps guided by the several meetings he had with Mother Teresa, he lived more and more that, quote, total dedication and complete consistency. Um, and Anybody have any comments before I continue on? Let's see the hands up. So, okay. Years later, Roger Walsh commented, there will doubtless be mythologies that try to make a saint out of Bill and perhaps other course founders. If we mean by saint someone who has resolved all their psychological and spiritual difficulties, then Bill was certainly no saint and never pretended to be. However, he was someone who worked as hard as possible to have a full spiritual life. Perhaps in the end, that's a more realistic view of what a saint is. But labels aside, Bill was clearly a model of sincerity and integrity. And who can even guess how many millions of people his life will touch? Wow, yes. And I agree. I mean, it's affecting the entire world. The work that Bill and Helen did has changed the world, radically changed the world. And we may not see it right now, but as it's the pace that it's moving at, and some of the now I have two different and many more people who have said that in the 2030s, which is maybe 10 years from now, there's going to be a tremendous shift. Um, and we're going to overcome the uh you know like the tipping point of the ego world, because we're overcoming obviously in our minds. And the more that you and I, the group of us, the people that are here now and in the future maybe listening on YouTube, whatever, um, know that you're a part of this revolution that's happening right now. You're a part of a revolution that is going to completely change everything, not because we're going to change the world specifically, but because we're changing our mind about the world. We will see and can see a world that's free of sickness, pain, um, all those things that he said early in that other section was horrific. These horrific things, um, really. Really, we can laugh when we see those things. We can laugh when we see those things because we know that they're not true. And the more of us who remember to laugh, the more of us, the quicker it becomes. And the more we dedicate ourselves to it, the quicker it becomes. The more I work on and manage my mind, I rule the kingdom of my own mind and allow the Holy Spirit to be my informant, then you know I, I'm doing it. I'm doing it through my sincerity and integrity. Um, and I could say that about anybody. We're all a model of sincerity, integrity, and who can even guess how many millions of people our lives are changing right now? It's the universe. I mean, it's everything. So, how could I be so lucky? All right, let's see. Would anybody else like to read a bit, or if not, I'll continue. All
I'll
right,
read. Where is it? Where do you just stop?
we're at Bill's guidance.
Bill's guidance was as clear about saying no as saying yes. Lael Luckett remembers, a great learning for me was in being less directive and less controlling. Bill wasn't a guy you could control. We used to go out almost every night. He had a very powerful intuition, and sometimes he would balk. He would open the door and just say no, he wasn't going. We knew not to push. For sure, when he said he wouldn't go, we should have stopped in our tracks because it would be the worst play you ever saw. Isn't that interesting? Okay. You know, this book really, I mean, in a lot of ways, if you look at Bill, he was the greatest example, right? I always say that. He was the best example of the Course in Miracles because of the way he died. So his closest associates knew about his inner inquiry for any decision, large or small, when anyone made a request that he felt was not for him. Bill usually modeled the ideal response, simply saying, no, that doesn't work for me, with no need to justify, explain, or make excuses. He made it clear that there was nothing personal in refusing. It's simply his guidance. Another legendary talent was Bill's ability to get tickets to any event he chose. Stories abound about all the times he showed up at an opera, play, or other special event, and someone would always sell or give him a ticket. Almost everyone who knew him well observed this remarkable skill in action. And it was very specific action. He never had subscriptions to the Metropolitan Opera while he lived in New York, but always attended whatever he wanted. He was likely to note that at 7:12 it would be time to go to the box office to get tickets. He always seemed to have a precise sense about when to go on his ticket acquiring quest. And he wouldn't get just any tickets, but the ones he preferred. As with all of us, the more something happens, the more we trust the process, and the more frequently it occurs. Pat Hopkins recalls a special trip to New York with Bill to visit some of his old haunts. The highlight of the trip for both of us, however, was hearing Jessie Norman sing her Metropolitan Opera debut in Berlioz' Les Travans. Bill worked the magic he was famous for about his friends by somehow managing to obtain center aisle orchestra seats to a sold-out performance. No matter how popular the event or how long he waited to purchase the tickets, I never saw Bill fail to get excellent seats for anything he wanted to hear or see, anytime he wanted to go. It was absolutely amazing. He used to tell me it was God's reward for being willing to help bring the course through. Even though he always laughed when he said this, I'm not at all sure he was joking. Let me go over that. Even though he always laughed when he said this, he wasn't joking because he had a sense because Spirit was talking through him. On the particular occasion, we had been sitting in our hotel room reading the morning newspaper when Bill suddenly said, I think we should go down to Lincoln Center about 2:30 this afternoon and look around. Not a word was said about opera tickets. We always knew there was none available. And Bill was never one to state the obvious. So we had some lunch and went down to the Lincoln Center a little before 2. We scrolled around looking at Chagall murals and some photographs and musical scores on display in Opera Hall. I didn't even realize Bill was gone until I turned around at one point to say something to him and saw him walking toward me from across the room. He had a gleeful expression in his face, and I knew that he had done it again. Sure enough, in his hand were 2 center aisle orchestra tickets for that evening performance. It was a thrilling performance. I remember looking at Bill during a particularly moving area and realizing we were both in a kind of altered state. It was transcendent, joyful occasion, one I'll never forget. Another example involved Ice Capades tickets. Jack Luckett had bought 3 tickets sometimes in advance of a particular performance, only to find that they would be out of town. He gave them to Bill, who then invited a couple to go with him, as it turned out. Another friend was going to be in town at that time, and Bill invited him also. His initial invite reminded Bill that he had only 3 tickets, but he reassured him that there was no problem. All 4 would go, Jack recounts. They drove to the sports. Let me just get this close up. Okay. They drove to the sports arena and with only 3 tickets. There were thousands of people surrounding this place, and they were walking across the parking lot when a man on a bicycle comes riding toward them, riding through all the people, through all the cars, and right up to them. Bill said, "Do you have a ticket for me?" And the guy answered, "Yes." Bill asked him how much it was, and the man mentioned an amount. Bill reached into his side coat pocket and pulled out the money and handed it to him, the exact money. It was not the amount of the ticket, but to the dollar. He had the amount of the guy was asking for the ticket. As he handed it to him, he said, "Thank you. I was waiting for this." But the ticket in his pocket, put the ticket in his pocket, and they went in. And it turned out this 4th seat was very close to where they were sitting in that huge sports area. Though it may sound trivial, the same dynamic appeared to parking places. Ease in finding parking places per se is hardly cause for celebration, But the state of mind it reveals is I was with Bill more than once when we needed to find a space in a crowded area. As we approached, I would suggest we start looking, and Bill would say, no, there'll be a parking space. Now, this is interesting because Ken has always said this guidance, he's always basically said that spirit isn't here for you in the world. But it really is, because I've seen Bill do this and I've seen Regina do this. So guidance is there.
Well,
But
I don't think that it's actually guidance. I think that that parking spot's always been there since the moment of the tiny mad idea when we wrote a script. It's been there waiting for him. It's
yeah, but
everything
wouldn't he
that's
have to know
here.
that from inside? He wouldn't know that from a person.
He doesn't have to know it because he's going to do it anyway. We're not making any choices about where we're
Oh,
driving
right.
or where we're
You're right.
parking.
You got that one really right. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like some magical mystical thing that there would be a parking spot there. That parking spot was there from the very beginning. There has never been a time when that parking spot was not there waiting for that car.
Right. It's written in the script. Yeah. And we have to
Yeah.
really bring that home. Yeah. You know,
Otherwise, you start thinking people are special and that this, oh, they're getting guidance. You're not getting guidance in there. You are not getting guidance to do anything because that would mean the Holy Spirit's involved in the world, and that's not possible. But we
well,
are doing exactly what's written in the script.
right. Like when Regina would ask for guidance, like at breakfast, what to eat, what to do next. I thought that had to be in the script too.
Yeah, it's her. Yeah, she's asking herself. You're asking yourself.
Right. You're asking yourself. And we think, well, yeah, you are. Yeah, because that's all that's here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, although he knew very well that miracles arise from a miraculous state of mind, he wasn't always there. He wasn't constant, but when he knew he was on, it always worked. Hugh remembers. I love Hugh Pragner. I have some of his stuff. And yet he didn't think he'd led a charmed life or had special powers and was just as aware when things didn't work out. It's not like he thought there was someone making everything smooth for him. He did not subscribe to a race of chosen ones, and the whole subject of manifesting that somehow our spiritual path gives us powers ordinary mortals don't have, whereby the Holy Spirit opens personal doors so you get the right job, the right car, money, success, and parking spaces was immensely amusing to him. We shared a tremendous amount of humor about all this, and he delighted in talking about it. It was part of his open mindedness. Despite his being somewhat cynical about our personal ability to manipulate the world, he was completely open to psychic phenomena that show the unreality of the world, which is not quite the same thing. If intuition worked while he was on and not at all times, he was very happy that Helen's intuition was not always reliable. One usual challenge that weighed on him in the first years away from New York was Helen's prediction made around the time ACM was first published about when both she and Bill would die. She saw the date on her tombstone. She was off by 1 year and indicated Bill would follow her within a year of her passing. Since she had died in February 1981, everyone, certainly Bill, felt some apprehension as the anniversary date approached. This is interesting. It came and went without incident, and everyone let out a collective sigh of relief. Bill survived Helen by 7.5 years. Ken Watnick had noted she could be notoriously wrong when she had a personal investment in a prediction. And that's the truth. That is the truth. I've seen that over and over. If you really think you know, and in the ego, you don't. So you just let the flow move through you. That was her psychic facility misfiring rather than the voice that authored the course. Only with nonspecific, Non-personal course material was she always absolutely clear. Even though Bill had followed his guidance or intuition about moving to Tiburon, that didn't imply his time there would be proverbial bed of roses. It was simply the local for his next round of inner growth and releasing defenses. He mused, I guess to sometimes we also really have to go to the ultimate despair in order to break through. At least I do. It seems to be the way it went. And that may be the only way I can learn. I felt I had to struggle with everything, including the course. It was very hard to be on this path without notion of struggle, which seems so predominant, but I loosened up a bit. All learning isn't difficult or painful of necessity. Only resistance makes it so. Along with the most challenging situations, Bill also had some wonderful happy times in Tiberlin. A friend of mine coined the phrase trading up to grace to describe the process of relinquishing the ego. Bill was increasingly able to set aside the distractions of the world and his own illusions. He moved steadily toward his goal, peace of mind, through each opportunity to let go of fear and indeed trade up to grace. Oh my God, look how she just did all that. Marcia, do you want to read now after this?
Are you talking about in this group?
No, this group, like the chapter 22. I don't know what time it is. What time is it?
Oh, it is 10:03.
Okay, you want to read a couple minutes, couple.
I'll read a little bit and then I'm not sure how long I'll stay.
Okay.
Okay?
All
Okay.
right.
So now we're still in Never Forget to Laugh. Chapter 22. In 1982, as Bill recovered from his near-fatal heart episode, his friendship with Pat Hopkins continued to deepen. Pat remembers from that time, sometimes I would join him and Jules for dinner, and our conversation would continue through the evening hours. It was obvious that our friendship was becoming more intimate, but it did not feel like falling in love romance. Rather, it was more a recognition of something I do not know how to describe, something that gave us both comfort and a deep sense of kinship. I find it fascinating that so many people refer to that feeling with Bill. They variously likened it to a sense of kinship, being part of a family, an indescribable connection, recognizing an old friend, or even oneself, or a feeling of coming home. Nothing words can accurately convey. Incidentally, it's reassuring to know that no matter who you're with, the feeling of being included in the family increases as you practice forgiveness. In late spring, Bill suggested that they become housemates. Pat had a long daily commute to Tiburon from Santa Rosa, her home at the time, and Bill recognized his need for companionship. So for both practical and emotional reasons, it seemed a perfect fit. From a broader perspective, it was also a perfect opportunity for both of them to continue to acknowledge some unfinished issues and to choose to let them go. The Course is crystal clear that the purpose of all relationships is our healing, whether we ever come to that awareness or not. And this one was no exception. Pat and Bill had much in common. They both loved classical music, Mozart for Bill, and a more balanced repertoire for Pat, and it was the centerpiece of their respective lives, second in importance only to their spiritual practice. Both were also very bright, intellectually gifted, and loved reading and discussing what they read, including much mystical and spiritual literature. They also shared a common sense of the absurd and had many a good laugh over the local soap operas within their community. As a primary focus from 1982 to 85, Bill, Pat, and Jerry spent a great deal of time together writing Goodbye to Guilt, attending the daily 9 a.m. meetings, interacting with their friends, whose common bond was the course, and attending to the business of the Center for Attitudinal Healing. All three were on its board of directors during times when not serving on the board. Pat was a consultant to the center and later a temporary acting director. She also helped Jerry establish an ancillary organization, the Foundation for Spiritual Alternatives. So as she said, she was the ham in the Bill Jerry sandwich. In preparation for moving in together, Bill had opened a box of memorabilia and with some resistance looked through it. I found samples of absolutely everything, like reprints of old papers going back over 30 years and a report I had written when I was studying brainwashing. I also found a certificate that the War Department presented to me for my work on the atomic bomb, as well as some scattered personal notes from the course that Helen and I had taken out. There were also some old birthday cards that Helen had written and pictures of both my parents. It was a review of This Is Your Life, going back to the middle 1940s, all jammed in a box. I found my reaction very strange. I was sad and obviously had resistance to looking. I threw out a lot of it in preparation for the move. So in cleaning house, I reviewed all the madness that one accumulates. House cleaning is good, but I have the feeling that there is something that I don't want to look at, or something is missing. In his relationship with Pat, Bill would continue that house cleaning, moving, yet another step toward his liberation. Despite all they had in common and their great admiration for one another, Pat indicated that nevertheless, living together did not always go smoothly for us, and that their time together was the best times and the worst times, quote Dickens. This is exactly what one might expect from a relationship so important to their mutual growth. I've always thought we learn our lessons with our closest friends who agree at some level to be the mirror to our own fears, though at the time it can feel decidedly unfriendly. The people we live with provide the setup for deep and essential work if we choose. Bill followed his own unique path to waking up as he built and maintained various relationships throughout his life that delivered exactly what he was willing to deal with at any given moment. The introduction to the course text says, free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at any given time. We do have to unlearn our fear and guilt. We can drag our feet or dedicate ourselves in a cooperative manner to discovering those beliefs masking as truths. Clearly, Bill and Pat's relationship had the same purpose, mutual healing, regardless of whatever reasons or needs seemed to draw them together. Bob Howe recalled, I remember sitting down there in his condominium when Pat was living with him, and they were arguing about which way the toilet paper should be on the holder and the paper towels. Each one had their own inner secrecy, and you kind of knew they had their own thoughts, their own way of doing what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it. They were perfect companions for the work at hand, and their time together was an essential part of his curriculum and hers. A releasing, clearing, and burning away of old grievances and outworn beliefs regarding that curriculum, Pat reminisces. As the surviving co-scribe of the course, I believe Bill felt an enormous responsibility. I would almost call it a burden to be both modest, which was his nature, and to do everything he could to live and exemplify it. I still feel that Bill felt very strongly that he was holding the iconic, the symbolic essence of the course after Helen died. While he did extraordinarily well with not being inflated by those projections, I think he still felt them. At times, I felt This cost him enormously in terms of his own personal life. He was very divided between a fulfilled personal life and what he felt he needed to be for the course, putting certain constraints on our relationship as well. It is hard to know, however, whether this sense of constraint I felt came solely from Bill's desire not to compromise the course in any way or form, or from the guardedness he felt compelled to maintain most of his life about his homosexuality. I believe that beyond guardedness about being gay and resistance to the iconic role he felt he should fill, Bill simply had an internal sense of constraint from birth. Jason Kahn picked up on that when he visited Pat and Bill shortly after they had moved in together. The only time I ever saw Bill a little nonplussed was when I went to see them just after they started living together. Pat and Bill were standing in the kitchen of his apartment, and I was close by the adjacent dining nook. All of a sudden, the room filled with soft rose pink energy. I saw it everywhere and felt it inside myself as well. It was astounding. Fortunately, I had an experience of this just the week before, and I knew what it meant. It was the presence of love urging us to open to expansion. Before I could stop myself, I felt the energy move me into the room and open my mouth. I started telling Bill to trust getting closer to the Pat, which for me was, well, I never say things like that. I could feel this sweet rose energy presence saying to them, you have something important to do together. Bill was clearly nervous and upset. I think he felt inadequate and overwhelmed, but I could tell that he knew he was being given a gift he could trust. It was about their hearts joining. It was clear that their hearts were on the verge of joining into some remarkable commitment that neither of them had experienced before. I don't know if he saw that energy too, but I certainly felt it, and Pat seemed grateful because she knew her heart was ready to give him whatever she possibly could. For Bill, it was like asking a person to step off the curb blindly knowing that rush hour traffic was about to begin, yet knowing the danger he felt was his own fear and that he would somehow be okay.
Um, wow. This is really interesting. I know I read this book before. It's been a while. Um, but this whole thing, it seems to me like this joining with this woman, Pat, actually was giving him an opportunity to heal his relationship with Helen because he was never able to um, he and Helen were never able to really open up to each other because of all their, significant differences, both in character and, just in general. So, having this woman who was willing to join with him, and obviously this was not a sexual relationship. I don't think it may have been. Who knows? But that isn't really what matters. What really matters is being able to have this relationship um, that that could heal her heart and to heal his heart as well. Um, and I love it. It's beautiful. So, do you want me to read for a while, Marcy?
I sure do.
Okay. Thanks, Marcy. I know she has her brother staying there, so she's been busy.
Oh, geez, Marcy, I just wanted to say how I just appreciate you so much. And I'm so darn grateful that you're here.
Thank you.
Because, I think, I've longed for a long time to have more connection to you. So this is really, really, really beautiful.
Let me just ask you one thing.
Yes.
When did you start inviting me to this group?
I don't know. It's been a few years, I think.
It feels like 30. Could be 30, maybe 20 or 15.
I know, I know.
I was so resistant. I was so resistant, and it was just foolishness.
Well, you didn't know, and obviously, I didn't communicate well enough.
Oh,
And
yes, you did.
it wasn't time. That's it. I
Yeah.
think that's it. It just wasn't time, and both of us had to. There had a lot be some things happen, and so. But geez, I just. I just so appreciate your spirit, and I'm so, just like I said, so grateful to have you here. And I was going to ask you before we go on just a little bit, are you doing the garden thing this year too, or have
Down
you
the
gone?
street.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
the funny thing that happened, I let them know last year that the lawnmower guys are going to mow, because that's just it's a building with an empty lot and with the parkways, and I started on the parkways, and I only dug out. I don't even think there was that much grass in that one area I did, and that area is fine and safe. But contacted the alderman again and was told, "Don't worry, they're not going to mow the lawn. They're not going to mow it. We already talked to the owner," and they mowed the lawn on like 3 parkway areas that I planted, which also I didn't get the grass out. That was my doing. Um, and so Ego got a little upset. And what I'm finding now is my own garden looks like a train wreck in the front, in the base, all garden now. And I'm like, why did I do that? But just to answer briefly, I will keep that little section that's okay, and maybe move stuff from where the things got mowed. As soon as they come up a little more, I'll move them to the garden that's safe, or as safe as can be. and then not take any more. I don't think I'm going to take any more, because once they sell the building, they can decide to do whatever they want with that area. So it's
It's
hard it's
amazing.
hard to say if it would be for naught or for whatever, but since my yard needs so much, I'll just focus on that now.
That is hilarious. I
Yeah.
mean, because if Marcy goes around, she rescues plants. She finds plants. Oh, what's going on with this poor plant? It doesn't. She'll take it and plant it somewhere. She's always, and she did like the school garden. She's always doing things for other people in the most amazing way. I just see you like being like Mother Earth over there. Uh,
Well,
and you're
the funny thing about the school garden was I took it over. It wrapped around the entire building, and some of that was the work of others, and some of it was just me pushing people into gardening with me. And when they wouldn't tell them that they hired a company to come in, and I said, well, you tell me what my stuff is that's coming out, and I'll take it out. And they said they wouldn't ask the company. So we moved the whole garden and gave it away.
That's amazing.
So
That's
it was pretty
amazing.
funny.
Oh my gosh,
I'm like,
Mother
if
Earth.
you can't tell me if these are going to get pulled out, they're leaving. They're
I
leaving
love
now.
I love it. I love it. It's so beautiful.
Well,
Uh,
thanks.
all right. So enough of that. Okay, back to never forget to laugh. So now we're going to speak about Bob Rosenthal. Robert Rosenthal speaks for many in seeing their relationship as imperative to Bill stepping forward. He's speaking about the relationship between Bill and this woman, Pat Hopkins. This is what Bob Rosenthal said. I think when Pat Hopkins moved in with him, that was Bill's attempt at a deep psychological and then even psycho-spiritual level to move through his grief. And maybe not just the grief from Helen, though that was the most significant, but a deeper, lifetimes long grief. I think that he and Pat had an old connection, that they had agreed to come together at that time so she could help him get through his fear and grief. Bill was the happiest I had ever seen him with Pat, at least in the beginning. I believe their relationship allowed him to move beyond his unfulfilled expectations about Helen. Oh, so that's what I just said. I could have kept my mouth shut, because this is what it is, that this helping him to heal his relationship with Helen. As an interesting aspect of Bill's multitasking talents, or perhaps of his don't fence me in proclivity, Bill established new, significant relationships and maintained others while he and Pat lived together. About the time that Bill and Pat were becoming better acquainted, he met Carla Gale Olson. Carla Gay Olson. They became close friends, and their Thursday play days with Jules were noted earlier in terms of the healing Bill often seemed to precipitate. Bill and Carla Gay occasionally got together on weekends when her husband Steve also joined them. When Catherine Prescott moved to town in 1984, she and Bill also became very close. At first, he saw her regularly in her professional therapeutic role, but that ultimately morphed into a more personal relationship as well. Bill's other meaningful relationships created a win-win situation, as Pat also cherished having her own space. Those of us from out of town also maintained our friendships with Bill. He and I got together on our, my many visits to Tiburon, as well as periodically talking on the phone. His original core group in Tiburon remained central to his life in California, and his capacity to genuinely care for many individuals at the same time was very deep and remained to the end of his life. Bill could be with a person in love rather than being in love with a person. And each relationship seemed to foster another important aspect of his self-discovery. As Pat and Bill began their fourth year sharing an apartment, both were often gone. In 1985, Pat started traveling to do research for the book she co-authored with Sherry Anderson, The Feminine Face of God, and ultimately moved into her own apartment in January 1986. Bill was spending perhaps a third of his time in La Jolla, visiting there from 1982 to 1986 on an increasingly regular basis. Several months after they moved in together, Bill and Pat had gone to La Jolla, and after that, Bill made extended visits, sometimes with Pat and sometimes alone. They had discovered a quiet, well-run motel, and either he or they stayed in the same room on each trip. He loved the greater ease of the Southern California lifestyle and established a pattern of going there for at least 3 weeks and then returning to Tiburon. After several weeks, he started to feel a bit lonely and less energized, so he would head back south. He talked about vacillating between Tiburon and La Jolla, or more humorously, teetering away from Tiburon and leaning toward La Jolla. Teetering and leaning. Clearly, something was drawing him there. It would be the last venue for his healing, representing a major breakthrough, an outward sign of another significant step in his evolution. Robert Rosenthal recalled, I think the next important transition for Bill was when it became clear that the relationship with Pat was not going to work out. From the way I understand it, Bill wasn't really capable of a full sexual relationship with a woman. And so the relationship, as close as it was always left incomplete, a halfway relationship. I could actually this is the thinking of the world. My gosh, I'm just going to stop right here. That's the thinking of the world. To think that you have to have sex to have a whole relationship. We couldn't have a whole relationship with anybody then, because even people we do have sex with, we don't have generally a whole relationship with. So there again, here's how the thinking of the world got into somebody's head and prevented them from being able to experience the peace of God in their mind, because they were thinking that they should have been playing some role. Anyway, continuing on. Celibacy may have worked okay for him, but probably not for her. From Pat's perspective on their time together, we were like family, but not sisterly, brotherly, and we were partners, but not in the traditional sense of the world. To this day, I don't know how to describe our relationship. And because the description obviously is a definition the world made up, of course. All right, she told me, I know it was hugely and immensely important. I would say that both our lives were significantly enriched, but I couldn't give specifics. Hugh remembers getting together with them after they stopped being housemates. When he saw the humor in it, their learning experiences, and at the same time, I think times of not getting along, was distressing to him, but he didn't hang on to it. Neither of them did. They had been very close friends and became very close friends again. They would tell many funny stories about what had happened when they were together and what went on in that apartment. It was just a riot. Let's see, we have a few more minutes. Does anybody have anything to say? My voice is running out, so if anybody would like to say anything,
Well, it's time to go. It's 11:30 anyway.
yeah, I have 11:27, so it's
I
about that
think the
time.
book is, Marcy and I were talking this morning how relaxing it is to read this book. It's just very relaxing.
Yeah, and it's just cool to see and read and think about, the lives of these people that were so. I mean, it's kind of I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like voyeurism, looking in on the lives of someone who's actually our contemporaries, lived the
Yeah.
same time that we're alive. Not like Jesus thousands of years ago.
Right. They did live
It's
the
them right
same.
here, right now. Yeah. So, all right.
But
Well,
at
I'm going to stop.
65, I think I was in, because I was born in 55, so I was like 10, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was 12 and yeah. Uh, anyway, I'm going to go.